Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum. Jiayanu, Pakhairagale, Ni Hao, Chunushumme, Washmale, Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Hola, Boyo, Privyet, Kaifa Hal, Hale Shuma Chatore, Ahlan Wasal Marhaba, Buna, Mucho Gracias, Swabia, Balikre, Hoshgal, Denayo, Sayo, Huyamora, Chivato, Chihal Yud, Kalimera, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Ms. Hajar Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and I hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your Friday with us. But first things first, hello Hajar, Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing? Jummah Mubarak.
Walaikum assalam, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for introducing me. Jummah Mubarak to you and everyone out there. Since it's Jummah, I think for Muslims it's a spiritually very important day for us. So I was listening to so almost like that, yes. But I don't think so. We have Eid every week, right? But some are closer to it. But I was listening to a very interesting conversation on the Jummah, and I wanted to share with my viewers here. That is about an anecdote, especially that we find in Quran, and it is about the Qarun, right? And we also find his reference in the Bible too. So it is famed about Qarun and his khazana, the key to his wealth, and he had the 40 camels which used to hold a lot of keys in that, right? But he was very arrogant, and also at the same time he was very ignorant. He would constantly ignore the message of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, who was preaching the message of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he never listened to it. And one day his entire wealth vanished somewhere, and I think till this date no one could find it. And you can find the same story in the Bible, obviously with a big exaggeration at that point. But having said so, Shahzad, I was reflecting that in this world we find so many Qaruns. So you will find that there are so many conglomerates, there are so many giants who are making billions, trillions of dollars out there. But yet
Top 500 and whatnot.
Yes. And you will find the people at such a young age are exceptionally doing wonderful job at making money. But then again, and I was reflecting that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has devised these two Eids and as a mechanism to make sure that a wealth is in circulation, right? So on Choti Eid, we have this Fitrana or Eid al-Fitr, we know it, right? So Allah wanted to make sure that the circulation of wealth remains in the society, and we make sure that poor are also included in all of this felicitation and whatnot. And on Bakra Eid, we have the Bakra and the meat, because everyone can't get to afford that high protein all the year, right? So Allah wanted to make sure that they also are not deprived of that luxury of the meat, right?
And that's and I think that it's a wonderful religious value, because you know, where you spoke of Fitrana, imagine that, you know, there's another benefit of Fitrana, and that is that because, you know, you're just coming out of Ramadan, and you know, so everybody's fasting, so all of your sins, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I'm going to think, that Allah has forgiven all my sins. So God forbid, you know, if in between Eid and, you know, that one day or one night, God forbid if you committed a sin, that Fitrana is going to take away your sin too as well. That's what, you know, most of the time I've heard from people. But ladies and gentlemen, to have this religion as ours, to call it as ours from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam onwards, it's just relaxation. It's just more of us enjoying life, alhamdulillah, knowing that, you know, that we are the followers. Only we are the followers of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and every day is an opportunity for everybody to kind of rethink. And you know, it's very simpler for us to kind of say that, you know, since we born Muslims, then, you know, to practice, you know, Islam is actually easier. But it's not that. I think that anybody who's actually been blessed by a brain and they'd like to think, they would actually kind of think about other religions as well. And then to come down to a point that, okay, this happens to be the religion, alhamdulillah, for all of us. You know, we're blessed, alhamdulillah, that we are the ummati, the message has been completed, whatnot.
And it has been perfected for us in the first place. And so a lot of the modern day Qaruns, and I think they also need to rethink their approach. I mean, they are earning a lot of money, but make sure that money remains in circulation in the society, because that gives you taskin, that gives you satisfaction, contentment, right? So you will often find this crisis of anxiety and depression because they've earned so much money, they really don't know what to do next, because they've already achieved what they're supposed to be a very materialistic goal, right? But religion is the one aspect that provides you a holistic way of life to look through it. It's not just about your spiritual cleansing, it is also about your material cleansing, it is about your bodily cleansing, physical cleansing and whatnot,
and
right?
Which is why, alhamdulillah, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to move on towards the top story. So let's get started with the program. Hajar, why don't you take the lead?
Okay, so Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif met with the US President's Special Representative for Environment and former Foreign Minister John Kerry in the Paris. The two leaders met on the sidelines on the World Summit on the new Global Financial Pact. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif appreciated the priorities of John Kerry and the US government on the issue of environment. The Prime Minister also said it is important to implement the commitments to provide resources after the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund. I agreed that the problem of climate change has increased the risk for developing the countries, and the two leaders agreed to maintain the contact and proceed with consultations for the joint efforts. I'm really glad that Prime Minister is there to represent his country on such an important platform, because climate change is one thing that has afflicted Pakistan very badly, extremely badly, and having the top leadership being present at such an important conference, that too in the France, shows Pakistan is very serious in implementing its commitment, in implementing what was talked about it in the COP27 agreement, in the COP15 agreement, I would say, and then there was subsequently a lot of clauses were added into that agreement in order to make sure that our environment is not degraded. I think as a Pakistani, that is coming from a very deep personal tones, because we can literally feel the effects of the climate change. And I think as an Islamabadi too, because we've never felt the temperature would cross 49 degree. It would, I mean, go to maximum 36 degree, 37 degree, and then after 2-3 days we used to have a rain. But those weather patterns have been abruptly changed a lot.
Exactly, and in addition to that, obviously for a country which is more vulnerable, to such climate changes, ladies and gentlemen, for the Premier and the entire team and the entire government, I think that this is the kind of, approach which they need to take, make sure to be at the forefront and to be at the helm of affairs, which I believe is wonderful, alhamdulillah. But, just yesterday, on the 22nd of June, ladies and gentlemen, it happens to be the longest day of the year. And then from here onwards, today onwards, we are moving towards winter. So, it's a good news. So let's first of all celebrate that. But yesterday, Hadra, it was too hot that I went to the gym, and then I decided that, okay, I can no longer work out over here. It was just suffocating. And which is why, because NDMA just a few days ago, we did kind of share the news with our audiences out there, has actually kind of released an advisory where we certainly need to take, necessary precautions, because there's heat wave around side. So, for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, what does the heat wave has for all of us to, kind of offer or not offer, and how we're going to avoid that? We actually have a small package to share. Please go ahead, take a look. Once you guys will come back, we'll take you towards the other news.
Again, experiencing a severe heat wave. Daily temperatures in the provincial capital are exceeding 41 degrees Celsius and humidity level higher than 45% every day, and hot winds are hitting the city as well. The Met Office has predicted temperatures to rise in most parts of Punjab during the next several days, with mercury level likely to remain 4 to 6 degrees Celsius above normal temperatures. Chief Meteorologist Lahore Chaudhry Aslam spoke to us about the heat wave.
Heat wave is prevailing over Punjab, and the temperatures will shoot up to 48 degrees centigrade during the coming days. But from 24th of June, a strong weather system will enter Pakistan, and from 24th to 29th of June, the Punjab will get very good rainfall, and this heat wave will subside gradually.
Temperatures are expected to climb as high as 50 degrees in southern Punjab and some areas of Sindh. The National Disaster Management Authority has already advised masses to take precautionary measures to cope with the scorching heat wave and hot winds. The heat wave is expected to subside gradually. Reporting for PTV World, this is Ali Danish.
I think we want to embrace ourselves for the impact of that heat wave, but we will certainly talk more about the heat wave and how to protect ourselves medically from all of this menace of the climate change. But a few days back, Shahzad, there was an immense debate on the social media, and I think everyone is aware of the fact that there was a Titan that went missing undersea. The ill-fated Titan submersive went missing on Sunday on its voyage to sunken ship Titanic. Titanic was a British passenger liner operated by a White Star Line, which sank in the North Atlantic Ocean on 15th of April 1912 after striking an iceberg during her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City. Those aboard the submersible highlight the tourist of the adventure that cost around $250,000 per person, included a Pakistani-born businessman, Shahzada Dawood, 48, his 19-year-old son Suleiman, and British billionaire and adventurer Hamish Harden, 58. The 22-foot submersible Titan, operated by the US-based Ocean Gate Expedition, began its descent on Sunday It lost its contact with a surface support ship near the end of what should have been a 2-hour dive to the Titan.
And the ill fate of the Titanic continues, unfortunately. I mean, imagine, so obviously, first of all, Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilaihi Raji'un for everybody who was on board, and obviously patience for the bereaved. But ladies and gentlemen, to be very honest, I think that that this is such a sad incident for people. When they start to push their boundaries, unfortunately, you never know what's going to happen, and that's exactly what happened with this submersive submarine, which was actually being controlled by a PlayStation controller. That's something which actually kind of makes me worry that if people were to kind of think beforehand that that you're going to pay $250,000 for a voyage where you're going to go down, watch the remains. You could have watched documentary. Everybody's got their own thought on this, and everybody wants to kind of have this adventure in their life. But for a submarine which was controlled by a PlayStation 5 sort of a controller.
But there's another debate, Shahzad, which springs in that Allah has already decided your date and the place of your death, right? And you cannot escape your fate.
And maybe underwater, maybe in the sky, ladies and gentlemen, it can be anywhere, and that's the kind of faith we have along the way.
Of course, but then this generated a lot of debate, especially on the Twitter, on the social media, which was about how, so this submarine, so the people in there were very influential people, and they had a lot of money as compared to how people are going after that rescue mission, as compared to that ill-fated ship that was submerged, that capsized in the Mediterranean in the Greek tragedy, and no one looked after them. And despite the fact that there were people who actually
more than 750 people
yes,
were on
migrants
board.
Were on the board. Obviously, not everyone is dead. Some survived, but there was a huge tragedy, and we Pakistan, we were mourning for that loss. And that also brings to another debate is that some lives are more important than the other lives, right? Obviously, it's a tragedy that people have lost their life in the water, but considering the fact that those migrants or refugees who were going from all over the world, they couldn't be accepted and they couldn't be welcomed by the European Union. Those whose foundations are built on the free movement and the free movement of ideas, people and whatnot, of goods and etc. Yet those words remain very empty when it comes to the practice, right?
Exactly.
So talking about the tragedies, and now moving on to another topic which is very important to us and which is coming from a very personal tone, it is that an increase in the temperature in Pakistan. And we've seen that in Islamabad too, that there is a heat wave going on. We can literally feel the effects of that, and how to protect ourselves physically from such sort of scorching sun rays. I mean, there's a lot of skin issues that crop up on and off, and then there was this report that a lot of people, patients of the diarrhea poured in Islamabad. So how to protect yourself from all of these issues? We are very glad that we have been joined by some really amazing doctors. So she happens to be Dr. Fatima Sajid. She happens to be a consultant dermatologist. Assalamu alaikum, Fatima, and Jummah Mubarak to you. Right, joining Ms. Fatima, we have Dr. Uzair Mushahid. He happens to be a consultant ENT specialist. Assalamu alaikum and Jummah Mubarak to you.
So thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have you over here. So ladies first of all, obviously, it's too hot outside.
It is.
People over here do not have the right information about, even if they know to use that, okay, they are supposed to apply sunblock, they might not know what the SPF volume needs to be. And, so certainly we have no idea. Okay, so we are the ones who are learning today. How do you think we can protect our skin, which happens to be the largest organ of the body? Right. What are your recommendations and what are the most common issues in this coaching?
And thank you so much for pointing to the sunblock, because there's also a debate that it's not that effective, especially considering the UV rays, they're very scorching and they can't really protect you from the sunblock, and it's all marketing in the first place. Is it a true perception?
So I'll talk about both the things. The most common things that I get to see in summers, and the most common problems that patients do come with me are, I think, because of the two things. First, because of the increased heat, there is an increased oil production, and that causes a flare in acne, bad dandruff, and overall an oily and greasy skin. And then secondly, because of the UV rays, as you mentioned, they are so high right now that all sorts of pigmentation disorders, so if anyone has melasma or maybe any freckles or anything, they all get worse in summer. So that's probably the two most common things that I have coming in my clinic right now. So for the sunblock, let me tell you. So we have basically two different types of sunblocks. There's a chemical sunblock and then there's a physical sunblock.
Okay.
Both are effective.
What is a chemical? What's the difference in chemical or physical? Physical, probably us wearing clothes, is a physical sunblock.
Yes, yes, definitely. That's a type of physical sunblock. But the sunblock that comes in the tube, it has two different kinds of ingredients in it.
Okay.
So one is a physical sunblock, that is it either has zinc or titanium or sometimes iron particles, and then they reflect the sunlight off your skin.
Okay.
The sun rays do not get absorbed in your skin at all.
Okay.
So that's a physical sunblock. And then the other type of sunblock we have is a chemical sunblock.
Okay.
And what that does is that when you apply the sunblock, there are certain chemicals that get absorbed in your skin, and when the sunlight falls on your skin, it changes the chemical structures in such a way that sun cannot damage your skin in any way.
Wow, so that's wonderful. And you know, one more thing, because I've always been very confused in, you know, using a sunblock and then using a different moisturizer altogether. So first I have to apply a moisturizer, that's what my wife tells me, and then I have to apply a sunblock. But so then later on I figured out that, okay, you know, let me just apply the sunblock and it will moisturize as well and it will protect me against the sun. So is that a good idea?
Yeah, definitely. So we have really good sunblocks now. This used to be an older concept when sunblock used to be like really starchy and white kind of material. You know, when people are having a cricket match and cricketers, you know, usually put sun. So that kind of sunblock, you do need some moisturizer for that. But we have really good sunblocks now. So they have the moisturizer, they have hyaluronic acid in them and all kinds of good things. Just put on a good sunblock because it's already so hot and you know it gets very greasy. So there's if the sunblock is a moisturizing one, you don't really need a second moisturizer.
Exactly, because you know, to put it the right way, ladies and gentlemen, it's too hot these days that even if you know, take a shower and you come outside, people will still ask you that, have you taken a shower today? You know, because you're still sweating. So let's move on, because you know what happens is that, you know, when it's too hot outside, what you do is that you want to drink, you know, a lot of cold drinks and probably cold water and lassi, and you know, so it's more of cold and cold, and or agar aam bhi khane, to, you know, put them in the freezer first of all and whatnot, which actually kind of, you know, makes you land in a position where you do not want to land, and you know, you have a lot of issues with your throat. So we're very lucky that since we have an ENT specialist over here, so let's move on to him. So Dr. Saab, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us. What are the most common issues you come across, and that too in summers where we are experiencing heat as high as 48 degrees Celsius?
Okay. So to begin with, if anyone still has any doubt about the heat wave, you can see how much I'm sweating.
And it's just because of the fact that, you know, I keep on reminding them, but it's perfectly all right. I think I won't say that because we're live on television. No, does not look really nice, but yes, please go on.
So definitely, like you mentioned, that there is a problem that in order to combat the heat, people try to drink a lot of cold drinks and ice cream and stuff. And although I feel it's a bit exaggerated that you eat something cold and suddenly your throat will become sore. It's not as severe, but definitely it does happen. And what I at least advise my patients is that it's okay to have some few cold drinks. Obviously, I'm not so cruel as to tell them that it's hot and then you avoid drinking something cold as well. But be moderate in that. Don't be too excessive in that. Anything in excess is obviously more is more damaging.
Dr. we do see especially the labor class who are working in this extremely scorching heat, right? So the other day I was coming and I think there was some emergency because that he was an older gentleman and he fell ill because he can't, I think, sustain the immensity or the intensity of the heat in the first place.
Obviously.
So for people like us who, alhamdulillah, Allah have blessed us with a lot of things and we are prestigious enough to help them out, how can we help them out in the first place, especially those who are working in this extremely, harsh conditions, and that too in the heat wave? To them, what sort of beverages do you recommend them? And then also about their diet, what sort of nutrients would you recommend to those people?
Well, I would say I'm not an expert on the nutrition part of it, so I can't really comment too much in detail. Obviously, I can comment a bit about the general principles. So avoid staying too much in the heat, in the direct sunlight, try to get into shade. But
that's not an option for them, right?
I do understand, obviously.
Put some cold cloth on top of their head, you know, something like that.
And try to not expose your skin to direct sunlight, try to get into the shade every little while. Obviously, for the people who are in charge, who are managing them, they should be sympathetic to their plight as well. They should try to give them frequent breaks. They should try to let them cool off, and by cool off I mean not only just drinks etc., but give them some damp cold cloths to wash themselves. So those are some
lower
things. Interestingly, another thing that I as an ENT specialist get to see in the summers are frequent nosebleeds.
Oh.
Right. So with hot and especially dry weather,
we call it naksir. It's very
naksir,
commonly
and
called
we
naksir.
call it epistaxis.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we get quite a few nosebleeds in this weather as well.
So how can we stop that?
Right. So I'll tell you the basic way, and obviously then there's the more refined.
And then the cause of it, is it because of dry nose in the first place? Is it because of the people, because they pick their nose too much, may it be summers or winters? And then so we have a very different remedy over here. Our mother used to tell us that, but so I'm going to show to my audience that essay, you just lie down on your bed, so obviously the blood's not going to come outside because the flow is not that.
Right. So on those two questions, why it happens and how to deal with it. So why it happens is, yes, usually it's dry air that actually makes the vessels brittle. I'm obviously simplifying it a bit.
True.
But it's basically that the vessels, the blood vessels in the nose, they get drier, they become more fragile, and then they burst. And obviously, due to excessive heat and exertion, raised blood pressure can exacerbate and worsen that.
Okay.
So that's why it happens.
Okay.
Very simplified. How to deal with it? I would respectfully disagree with your mother.
Yeah.
Her heart is in the right place, but how we actually deal with it, this is known as the pinching maneuver. So what basically you do is that this is the, I hope you can see it, this is the bone. You can still do that.
Right.
So this is the bone of the nose, and below it you actually hold it.
Okay.
You keep it pressed and you actually lean forward.
Okay.
The reason for leaning forward is that you don't want the blood to go from the back of your nose to your throat.
Okay.
You actually want it to come out and you can spit it out, because
Okay.
if it goes in your throat, that creates more problems.
True.
Right.
And you have to keep it pressed for at least 5 minutes, because it takes 5 minutes for the blood to clot.
Okay.
Right.
And most of the cases, 90% of cases, they will resolve with that.
And then most of the time we put our heads under like cold water as well. Does that help?
Well, there's no, at least I haven't come across
Thanda
the
pani
literature.
pao, thanda pani pao, all of a sudden there's this.
But it's not damaging, you can do that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much it helps. I haven't read any literature that
it helps every time, because our producer Seher actually happens to be a mother too as well. She's saying that it helps.
Well, if it helps, then but it doesn't harm, so you can do it.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
This thing, however, is a bit harmful because the blood can get into your throat.
Wonderful.
Right. So coming to you, Fatima, so since you talked about that there are a lot of issues, especially regarding the pigmentation, and nowadays I think that the UV rays is a very strong, especially in this heat wave, right? So how we can protect our skin from that sort of damage, because there's a lot of skin cancers that I'm hearing that are propping up. How to protect ourselves, because prevention is always better than cure in the first place.
Definitely. So if you're looking to protect yourself from the sun rays or the UV rays, the first place to start would obviously be try to be as less out in the sun as possible. But obviously it's not an option for everyone, because obviously you have to go out and do your daily job and everything. So the other thing would be, as I mentioned, the sunblock. So we have a large variety of sunblocks in Pakistan, and for the skin type that we have, the brown skin, the SPF that is recommended is usually above SPF 40 and 50. And most of the people don't know about this, but there's a two-finger rule about applying sunscreen. So you do need to apply at least 1 teaspoon or at least 2 finger lengths of sunscreen on your entire face to achieve the SPF that is written on the bottle. But no one applies this much of SPF.
But I have the one, which is a spray, so I sprayed like 3-4 times and sprayed over here, and then kind of whatever is left over on my arms, I'm like, okay, good to go, that's it.
So it needs to be at least 1 teaspoon of the sunscreen on your face to achieve that SPF.
But what always kind of used to make me worry about was that that it never looked like the way cricketers would have it on the field, so it was never that white stripes you would have on your lips or probably on your cheeks. Now the sunscreen is just as it's a moisturizer.
It's like a moisturizer, exactly. So
it's fine?
So yes, definitely. And there's a better type of sunscreen that's available, and that's known as a sebum controlled sunscreen. So what that does is it has certain gel-like properties. When you apply it on your face doesn't get oily at all. It's just matte. It's like applying a primer, like we do when we apply
before makeup.
Yeah,
I know that too.
So it makes your skin non-greasy. That's a good place to start.
Right.
But then if for people who have developed pigmentation, who have freckles or melasma, or it's gotten really bad, there are a lot of things, anti-pigmentary things that are available Usually they're to be applied at night, and you know there's a lot of awareness about skincare. Before, I think the generation before us was not that aware, and there used to be just a lump sum whitening cream that used to be applied for everything.
True.
But that's now not how
I
it is
think
now.
they might not face the sort of problems that we are facing now because of the heat wave and whatnot. But Dr. Fatima, I came across a very interesting conversation on the social media, and obviously there was a racist tinge to it, especially in the US, and someone was recommending, and that was a doctor, I think a dermatologist, and he says that the black people or the people who have a darker skin, they do not require sunblock because it wouldn't protect them from the sunburns in the first place, right? So what, as a dermatologist, as a doctor who's an expert in the field, what would you recommend?
Probably, I think, you know, he must have said it very professionally that, you know, that even if they got a sunburn, they might not, the doctors might not be able to figure it out if they had a sunburn itself.
Yeah, probably, but the thing is, sunblock works for everyone,
Everybody, yeah.
for every skin type. It can be fair, it can be brown, it can be dark, and it would work.
Okay.
So this is like scientifically proven that if an SPF is SPF 30, it blocks like 97% of the sun rays. If it's SPF 50, it blocks 98% of the sun rays.
Right.
So that's established. But I think the point that he might be saying is that one of the most important reasons of applying sunscreen, usually in the West, is to prevent skin cancers.
Yeah.
Right.
So skin cancers are more prevalent in people who have a whiter complexion.
Okay.
And for people like us who have like a more melanin in the skin, more pigment in skin, it's like a God-given protection. So we don't have that much of skin cancer.
So Lamia, thank you so much. And you know, since it's Eid season, so you know, and I live in a relatively modern neighborhood, so I actually saw a kid applying sunblock to his goat as well. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, Allah Mia has given him skin, you know, please, you do not really have to do
and
that.
there's a lot of hairs on
Shadab
that.
bhai, you don't know, you know, it's going to help my goat and what. I was like, just park him under the shade and I think it's going to be fine.
Maybe you should have applied some marination on him, make the meat more
Probably.
tasty.
But now, you know, coming down to the issues, you know, which obviously will concern your field. Now, what I would want to ask is that, you know, a lot of people complain most of the times. One of my friends, you know, just a few days ago, that's what he was saying. So what happens is that, you know, when God forbid you have a sore throat or you, and these days around, you know, even in summers and winters, you get different influenzas. So in winters, you know, you have a very different influenza. In summer, you have a very different influenza. But every time the weather is going to change, you will get that. So how to, first of all, make sure that we do not get influenza, number one. Number two, now what happens is that, God forbid, if you do not treat it the right way, or, you know, if you are only using your home remedies, what happens is that, you know, a lot of people complain about, you know, their ears getting blocked. You know, so most of the time they go to an ENT and the ENT is like, yaar, ye bahar se nahi, andar se hai. You know, so we are unable to understand that. So why does that happen?
And do you think that the nature of influenza has changed, especially after the COVID? Because I think we fall sick for a very long number of period, and then it takes a lot of time to heal ourselves back, which was not the case before.
Antibiotics every time.
Yes.
Right. So 2-3 questions. Number one about influenza. Number two, how the ear is involved. And number three, if the influenza is involving and how we need to. So tackling the first question, actually the preventions that we put in place for COVID, they are the best prevention for influenza as well. Obviously, it might not be that practical, but general measures are the same, that in a crowded area, wear a mask if you can, clean your hands, try to avoid coming in direct contact with people who are sneezing or who are having that active issue. That's one thing you can do. Okay, so coming to the second question, how the ear is related. So one of my patients actually jokingly asked me, how come you're dealing with so many random organs, the nose, the ear and the throat? And the thing is, they're actually very well connected. And here's an interesting exercise for your
even your balance is maintained because of all of these organs, you know, so please never take that lightly.
So
here's an interesting exercise if your viewers want to try it. If you just hold your nose and swallow a few times. So you just hold your nose. What do you
I've done it 3 times. I thought that my producer is going to show my face, but
right. So if you're doing it properly, if you block your nose and swallow a few times, you'll feel your ears close up a bit.
nahi ho rahe.
You need to get checked then. But generally, what happens is that there's a tube that connects the ear to the back of the nose and the throat. It's known as the eustachian tube. And many times, if there's infection in the nose or in the throat, it actually goes into the ear. That's why people may complain of a ear fullness. They might feel as if when going to a hilly area or going on an airplane, they feel the ear pop.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this technique. Now I cannot hear my producer's voice. Wow,
I am also feeling the pressure. I even didn't practice the practice exercise. But coming to you, Dr. Saab, so we've
So that's how they are connected. There's this the tube, the eustachian tube that connects the ear with the back of the throat and the back of the nose, and that's why they're connected.
No, the reason why I'm asking you this is that then what happens is that people, when they go to the doctor, because it's not anything in your ear, so it's probably that tube which is being blocked. It does not go away without taking an antibiotic course. So are there other options for people, whether steam will help or something other than that, chewing a gum? Or probably that Zynosine something,
So I don't particularly endorse any particular brand. So there are actually two questions hidden in that. If you
I'm sorry, but because I'm unaware. That's one thing which I knew about, so people might know it commonly.
Definitely. So there are two issues involved in that. Definitely, if it's blocked and you're unable to clear it, and these are the few maneuvers, you like close your nose, blow out, it will unclog your ears. If that doesn't work, it means it needs some medication. With regards to antibiotics. So generally the recommendation these days is that avoid antibiotics as much as possible.
Yeah.
Do not use them unless you have very severe condition, because that leads to antibiotic resistance. And generally practitioners are moving away from randomly prescribing antibiotics. They only tend to prescribe antibiotics in those patients who genuinely need it. Previously it used to be the practice to prescribe antibiotics to everyone, that is leading to resistance.
True.
So avoid that needs to be very preserved and very cautious with that.
Okay.
And those sprays, they actually help to clear the tube. And
has influenza evolved?
Definitely it has.
Yeah,
definitely it has. Over time it has evolved, and that's the thing with the viruses, they keep evolving. Even in COVID, the earlier coronavirus was very benign.
Yeah.
In fact, in our textbooks, they used to say it is a benign infection, and we used to leave that topic on choice, but it evolved into such a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
So
but now I think it will be an important question in the exam.
And I think that viruses have evolved more than human beings now. So human beings need to evolve too.
Yeah, you would be surprised at how nature works and how these, things which are invisible to eyes actually works. Because subhanallah, that is how the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined for them to work. But Dr. Saab, coming to a question, so Eid is around the corner, and there are a lot of cattle markets which have sprung up across the city, and there are a lot of ticks in the animals. So do you believe that there are certain diseases that can be transferred from the cattle to the humans? What should be the precautionary measures, and how dangerous it is if the animal is sick, and what is the intensity?
Don't even go closer to them, why you worried? It's the men who are at the forefront of getting a cow.
Oh my God, such a huge task. I think you should be blessed with some bravery or whatever.
I mean, once a year, let me do this, let me take this one, once a year, why not? Yes, please.
So I think Fatima would be able to comment on it much better. She's much more knowledgeable on this topic than I am.
It's true that I do get to see a lot more different
people get rashes and itching and whatnot.
Really bad rashes. So a very different set of diseases right after the Badi Eid. So I don't get as many patients after Choti Eid as I do after Badi Eid, and that's because of the meat and the animals.
Right.
So one of the most common things is a rash, and usually people who are allergic to some of the things that are used when preparing the meat, they get really bad rashes on their hands. And then there's another very particular thing. It's known as a ORF virus.
Okay.
And it's like a bad pustule, and it usually forms on the hand. And usually butchers and people who are dealing with meat and animals, they get it a lot.
Right.
So I do see a big peak after Badi Eid. So there's a big influx of patients who have ORF on their hands, and usually it is transmitted directly from the animal. So if I would advise everyone, so if they go to one of the markets and they see any animal who has an ulcer or any kind of wound, don't touch it. Or wear gloves when you have to. Even when we're dealing with the meat and you're preparing the meat, wear gloves. True. So that's the best prevention because it's directly transmitted from contact.
Contagious. Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're wearing gloves, you're going to be protected, or you're going to have those rashes and those ORF, and that's a
exactly. And in addition to that, thank you so much, for so kind of you for sharing that with our audiences, because that's something which they really need to be careful about.
Yes.
But at times I've seen children, because children are too excited about having their goats and naming them and whatnot, and getting closer to them and taking them for a ride, whatnot, and it's a neighborhood competition. Who's got the biggest
playing
goat.
with the ears and whatnot.
Playing with the ears. So I can give a few tips as well that So imagine that, if you hold your goat's ear, and if they're cold, that means that, that the goat's got temperature. Okay, so please make sure that, you check this way.
You can identify it only by the ears.
And even by the tongue, by the tongue. But, I don't think that, you'll be able to put your hand in a goat's mouth or a cow's mouth. But very
not
quickly,
even the ears.
Because one of my nephew, I still remember that, that he was born with the condition that, if he was ever closer to animals, maybe a cat, dog, anywhere, goats, he would get these rashes. So, people who have had this condition, what will be your recommendation for them? Don't go near to them, or is there any treatment available for them?
So this is atopic eczema most likely. So atopic eczema is a genetic condition. Usually there is a genetic predisposition that it runs in families, or there's some sort of allergy in families. And it can present like a skin allergy in one of the younger children. Usually it starts before the age of 2 years. So for those children, they have really sensitive skin. So it's not just animals and meat.
Even if their dada kiss them quite a lot, that's what they go to get.
Yes. So it's dust, general pets at home. Their skin is just generally very sensitive to everything.
And for Bahu to kind of tell her father-in-law, "Yaar, isko please zyada laad na kare," that's a problem.
Yes, but it's something that everyone has to be aware about, because it is a very problematic position for the child, obviously, because
and for the mother and the father as well,
and the parents as well, because it's very difficult to see your child in a disease that's preventable, but because of the things, the steps are not being so it gets very difficult. So one of the most important things that you can do for children who do have atopic eczema is to moisturize their skin really well. So basically in eczema, the moisture barrier is broken. Basically they don't have those chemicals which are necessary to produce that moisture barrier, which is why their skin is just sensitive to everything. So if you moisturize their skin regularly, have a heavy moisturizer, put it morning, evening, night, they're going to be relatively safer from all kinds of allergens.
Well, that's great, and thank you so much for saying that. But one last question very quickly, Dr. Saab, and that will be from you, and that is that, so unknowingly I never knew this, so imagine that, ever since the summer started, so what happened was that, I would recommend my my domestic staff to kind of give me a big bottle of water in my room all times, so whenever I would go, I would open up the bottle and it had a straw in it, I would drink it from the straw and it was fine. So just yesterday, one of my friends was over at my place and I was like, yeah, this, I feel at times, there's too much gas, and, I just feel disturbed. And all of a sudden he turned back to my bottle and he was like, yeah, you're drinking it out of a straw. What do you think you're going to get? Is there any science behind it? Do you think that you get a little colic because of the fact that you've been drinking from the straw?
Well, I think I am not really the
but
right
still,
person.
What's your experience?
But generally, yes, that if the straw is old, if it's not properly clean, then it tends to upset your stomach, and especially if you're getting air into while you're swallowing, you're sucking in air as well, so that does tend to disrupt it. But personally, I've done the same thing, so I haven't had too much of a bad experience.
So I would like to add to that. That's usually a problem for little babies because they cannot sit up and they cannot expel the air from
and
the
then they start crying.
Then they start crying.
And you have no idea that what's wrong with the baby.
Yes. But for like adults, we can sit up and any air in our stomach just goes straight out. So it's usually not a problem for
us. Well, that's wonderful. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
The doctor duo for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation with you. And for everybody who's out there now, the responsibility lies on your shoulder, how to protect yourself. Make sure that if you're going outside in the sun, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you use sunblocks. If you're going to be out there for a longer interval, please make sure that you take some, clothes with you, which you can dip in cold water, probably just put it on your head, stay in the shadow. Drink enough water. That's very essential. Take enough juices. Probably salt as well.
Also make sure that you also look after the animals there, the birds, because they are extremely thirsty, and I think we have cut down all of the forests, so they don't have forest to live in the first place. So if you can find any place, make sure that you water them daily. And also the people, the underprivileged class who are working, laborers especially, because they have a very tough job, right? Working in an extreme scorching heat, and they don't have any option in the first place. So you look after them. And also I think the police, the people who are standing in the, regulating the traffic.
Give them water bottles, cold water bottles.
Exactly. And I think these small acts of kindness makes a huge difference, especially in your life and to the people who are other creational beings in which you are
So be nice and be kind, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, look after yourselves. It happens to be a Friday today. Jummah Mubarak to everybody, and remember us and our entire team in your prayers. Until next time, look after yourselves. 1, 2, 3.
Good morning.